Dean had been a firefighter in Newark for 15 years. He had seen countless fires, entered buildings on the verge of collapse, dragged people through smoke-choked corridors where you could barely see your own hands. And yet, whenever he was left alone during the night shifts at the station, that strange tension inside him never went away. When the metallic crackle of the radio startled him to his feet, midnight had already passed. Unit 27, we've received a report of heavy smoke coming from the abandoned industrial district. Address, 14th Street, old textile factory. The voice cut out, and the silence in the room grew even heavier. Dean pulled on his coat, yanked the laces of his boots tight, and heaved the weight of his gear onto his back. Going on a call alone was nothing unusual. Most of the minor fire reports in that area turned out to be campfires started by the homeless. But something inside him told him this one was different. As he drove the fire truck through the streets, the city didn't feel asleep. It felt dead. Streetlights flickered, and the faint hum of the highway carried in the distance. When he arrived at the factory, he shut off the engine and immediately noticed. Gray smoke drifted from the chimney, but there were no visible flames. That kind of smoke usually meant something was burning slowly, deliberately. A cold knot formed in Dean's throat. The factory's iron gate was chained, but the chain had been broken and lay on the ground. Someone had already gone inside. Dean strapped on his mask, grabbed his flashlight, and stepped through the gate. The smell of rust mixed with the heavy stench of burning made his stomach churn. The floor was thick with dust, but what caught his eye were the fresh footprints. Muddy tracks leading deeper into the factory's dark interior. Homeless, he muttered to himself. But he realized soon enough this wasn't ordinary, because scattered across the floor weren't just charred pieces of wood. They were strange metal fragments too. Small, square shapes, scorched coils of wire. They looked like parts of electrical circuits. Dean frowned. A homeless person tinkering with such things made no sense. When he lifted his light to the wall, he found something even stranger. Geometric shapes drawn in charcoal, circles, arrows pointing as if showing the direction of the wires. These weren't childish scribbles. They were deliberate, calculated drawings. The silence broke only with a faint hum, drifting from somewhere ahead. It sounded like electricity. Dean lifted his flashlight and moved toward one of the factory's rusted doors. It was slightly ajar, and a breath of cold air seeped through the gap. "Fire department!" "Who's there?" he called. No answer. He pushed the door and stepped inside. A stairwell appeared, leading downward. Narrow, damp stairs to the basement. Dean's instincts screamed at him to turn back, but duty pulled him forward. He descended slowly. His boots echoed. The hum grew louder with each step. On the wet floor, he saw cables, scorched rags scattered around. The basement was almost entirely dark. In the center stood a rusted table, cluttered with scraps of generators wired together, fuel cans, clusters of batteries, all patched together like some grotesque machine, but clearly working. The hum came from here. Dean's heartbeat quickened as he drew closer. Then he saw the walls. They were covered with photographs, pictures of old fires, collapsed buildings, charred rooms. But in some of them, faint human silhouettes appeared. It was as if someone had deliberately roamed through fire sites, capturing people in their final moments. Dean's throat went dry. Something inside him whispered, these weren't just collected images. He suddenly noticed the hum had stopped. The silence was so abrupt he could hear his own breath. A faint clicking came from behind him. He whipped his flashlight around. At the top of the stairs, a shadow slipped out of sight. Dean cleared his throat, but his voice cracked. Listen, whoever you are, you can't be here. There's a fire hazard in this place. You need to get out. Still no reply. But he heard movement. Slow, dragging footsteps across the concrete. Dean's light searched the basement. Beneath the table, wedged among the wires, he spotted a small metal box. On its face, a timed mechanism blinked with red digits counting down. His pupils widened. Some kind of device, maybe even a bomb. But the numbers were running down. His hands trembled. He had faced danger countless times before, but this was different. Someone had built this. Someone with intent, with planning. Dean's mind pieced it together. Someone had been starting these fires deliberately and documenting them. Maybe this was the hand behind the city's recent blazes. The scraping sound came again from the stairs. Closer now. Dean shone his light, but the beam struck only rusted railings, damp walls. He inhaled sharply and reached for his radio. Dead silence. Nothing but static. Someone was jamming it. Another step on the stairs. Dean's light darted back, his chest pounding. But again, no one. He stepped backward, eyes locked on the device. The numbers were dropping fast. No, he whispered. This is a trap. He glanced at the photographs again and froze. Some showed firefighters rushing into burning buildings. Their faces were blurred, but the uniforms were unmistakable. Dean's blood ran cold. In one picture, he saw himself carrying a woman down the stairs during an apartment fire years ago. The angle suggested the photographer had been inside the blaze. Dean held his breath. This wasn't just a pyromaniac. Someone had been following the firefighters, watching them, recording them. But why? A heavy thud echoed from the stairwell. Clear, deliberate footsteps now. Someone waiting for him to climb up, to trap him here. His eyes darted back to the timer. 2 minutes left. Panic surged. The device was wired into the generator scraps, meant to ignite something. If he stayed, he'd either choke on smoke or burn in an explosion. His mind raced. He yanked a cable loose. Sparks flew, the hum roared louder. The timer seemed to speed up, as if sensing tampering. One last chance. He grabbed the fire extinguisher from the table and smashed it against the box. With a metallic crack, the device toppled sideways, wires snapping. The lights died. Silence returned. Dean gasped for breath, his hands shaking. Relief lasted only a second. From above came the slam of a door, followed by the scrape of a lock turning. Someone had sealed him in. Dean bolted to the stairs, throwing his shoulder against the door. It held firm. Again and again he rammed it, the metal groaning but unmoving. At last, drenched in sweat, he stopped. That's when he smelled it. A sharp, chemical odor leaking into the room. Gas. The device hadn't been completely disabled. Maybe it wouldn't explode. But gas was filling the space. His lungs began to burn. He swept the light across the wall and spotted something new. Some of the photographs were fresh. So recent they showed a fire just days ago. And at the very bottom row, an even newer picture, his own fire station, shot through the window. Him sitting at his desk during the night shift. Dean's throat tightened. This wasn't only about setting fires. Someone was obsessed with firefighters themselves. watching them, tracking them, playing games with them. And now, it was Dean's turn. The gas scorched his chest as he rammed the door one last time. The frame groaned, a hinge gave way. With a final shove, the door tore loose, and Dean stumbled into the night air, gulping in the cold. But the street was empty, silent. Even the hum of the highway seemed gone. The only thing in sight was a faint thread of gray smoke curling from the factory windows. He didn't dare look back. Instead, an image flashed in his mind. The photo he'd seen of himself, sitting unaware at his station desk, already under someone's gaze. That's when he understood. It wasn't over. He'd survived the night, but someone had been watching him for a long time, and they were still out there. When Dean returned to the station, his hands were still trembling. He tried the radio again. This time it worked perfectly. But he couldn't bring himself to speak. What words could possibly explain what he had just seen? So he sat in silence, through the long hours, bridging night into dawn. When the sun finally rose, he caught his reflection in the glass. For a split second, he wasn't sure if the shadow staring back was really his own.